Shot fire.
Just read to Meridian and
Shot fire now.
Be Meridian. If there's still active shooting, we'll take the Bearcat, head that way.
39.
Upper Sioux, going to be Locust Grove and U-Stick, and they just put out a shot fire, just, on the route.
This is a 1032 podcast where we interview experts in firearms and training with law enforcement, military, and competitive shooting backgrounds. All right, this is Raul Garcia in the 1032 podcast. I got another guest here, and a friend of mine, co-worker, Carl Olson. How you doing, Carl?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. You ready to talk today?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So you worked for the Ada County Sheriff's Office for how long?
29 and a half years.
29 and a half years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Are you an old guy now or what?
I think I'm old. Shit, I'm retired, so I'm drawing a check.
Percy's a good thing, isn't it?
Percy's a good thing. I guess that means I'm old.
Awesome. So what have you been doing since you've been retired?
Just shooting a lot.
Yeah.
Traveling, visiting family.
Yeah.
Going to the gym a lot. Not being stressed out. Having normal sleep.
Yeah. Normal
shift
sleep is
work.
pretty awesome, isn't
Normal
it?
sleep's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Once I retired, I realized I was like, man, I don't feel like a zombie anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Good sleep cycles. It's
Yeah. So what type of shooting are you doing?
good. Mostly USPSA.
Yeah.
I play with my carbine a little bit every once in a while. Teach a couple classes for the academy and for the county as a contractor, but
So
mostly just shooting pistols, USPSA.
how long you? So as long as I've known you, you've been shooting competitively off and on, and you're still keeping up with those skills, huh?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Good camaraderie. Get
Yeah.
out there, put a gun in your hand, actually shoot it.
Yeah.
It's good for you, I think.
Yeah, I think so. You think it's good for law enforcement guys to do some of that?
Oh, I think that everybody who carries a gun should shoot competitively. If nothing else, it gives you a little bit of stress to do something. No, it's not tactics, but shooting fast and accurately is kind of important, I think.
Definitely, especially if you're carrying a gun for a living, for
If
sure.
you're carrying a gun for a living or you're carrying a gun to protect yourself, you're probably doing yourself a disservice by just doing flat range stuff and going out and shooting a target, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how long we know each other now? A long time, huh?
About 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20. Probably. Well, I started in like 2000 with the county. So.
So 24 years.
Yeah.
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 And time flies. That must mean you're an old guy too.
Yeah. Since I've known you, you've always kind of been a tactics guy. You think that's correct?
I don't know. That's the part of law enforcement that always interested me. So I always wanted to get better at tactics, be better at my job. I feel like the most important thing we do is respond to a hot incident. If you don't know what you're doing when you get there, that just makes matters worse. So you kind of owe it to yourself. This is my view. Like, you owe it to yourself if you're going to, wear body armor and carry a gun for a living, to get as much training, do as much training on your own as you can so that you're effective when you get there.
So during your career with the county, you worked as a jail deputy, you worked patrol, you worked SWAT, you were even the SWAT team leader, commander, right?
Yeah, I was for the last 10 years. I was the SWAT team sergeant.
Yeah, and I worked on the SWAT team about the same time you did, and I have to say our team, had some ups and downs throughout the 20 years that I was on the team, and sometimes good, sometimes bad, and we had some pretty good times while you were the team leader. You did a lot of good things for our team.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I remember there's peaks and valleys, and I think every tactical team's going to have that. You have change of leadership, become stagnant after a while. I think it's good to have leadership changes probably every 6 to 10 years. New ideas start coming in and stuff like that. And more, more interest in pushing to the next level. I think that towards the end for me, I was like, man, I think I'm ready to be done. And it's not the guys that give you the headaches, it's dealing with the administration and trying to explain to them why you need to do certain things, why you need to buy certain things. For me, that was a big struggle for me the last 2 years, and dealing with egos that are doing weird shit behind the scenes, and all those kinds of things, they give you some headaches. But yeah, I had a pretty good run. I was pretty proud of where our team was at when I left. I felt like I'd accomplished the goals that I'd set forth for myself when I took on that position, and actually goals that I continually came up with while I was in charge was, we need to do this. This is the next thing we need to work on. Things like that. I feel like I was very satisfied with what I'd accomplished when I left. So I had a good group of guys that were on the team, and it made it really easy.
Well, you did a good job. I know that, not just from myself, but from all the guys on the team.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I got them a hell of a lot of training, so they better like it.
Yeah, definitely. I think they all did. And I think, you got some new guys in there, and hopefully they'll just carry on.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
You and I, we worked on teams together on patrol. Early on, one of the first calls I remember you working on, I got stuck directing traffic. You probably remember this. It was a pursuit that came in from another county.
Yeah.
And out on the interstate, there was a standoff.
Yeah.
And I remember while I was directing traffic, you and Paul Carrera got to go up and I think break out some windows and take somebody out of a car or something.
He was already dead. So
is that what it was?
Yeah, he'd shot at some guys over in Canyon County and was going to kill his girlfriend or wife or whatever she was. And the day shift, I was on day shift at the time, weekend day shift, believe it or not. I only think I worked that twice in my career, but I hear the call come out and I was in queue and I'm like, I can get to that because it's like a Saturday or Sunday morning, there's no traffic. Haul ass, jump on the interstate and get behind the car. And the dude had been spiked, so he's running on rims, so he's just kicking up sparks everywhere, doing like 10 miles an hour. And then he took out a gun and shot himself in the head and crashed. So I already knew he was dead. But we had this big old standoff and everything because all the bosses show up and want to probably do it the right way. But there was a little overkill on that vehicle assault, I think. Looking back on it, at the time, I mean, shoot, that was 20 years ago. It's like I was a young kid. I didn't know what I didn't know. You know what I mean?
Yep. It's amazing. Sometimes you look back at early parts of your career, like, man, I'm surprised I'm still alive.
Oh, for sure.
Things
Better
that you
to be
didn't know.
lucky than good sometimes.
That's right. Well, we're going to talk about one of the many incidents that you've been involved with your career, and it happened. I believe it was a pursuit that ended up in an officer-involved shooting. But
Yeah.
You want to give us an overview of that and what occurred?
I can do that. So I was working graveyard. I was actually at a domestic violence call with a rookie cop, and she's a hell of a good cop though. So I really liked working with her. But anyway, we were at this domestic. It was a non-issue domestic, and I could hear in the background everybody else was working on this call where a guy pistol whipped his dad with like a .45 long Colt and then took off. So everybody was out looking for him. And it starts, as I'm listening to the call in the background while we're dealing with these people, you can tell like this is a non-issue that we're at and we need to go help on this. So we kind of dusted everybody off, and yeah, if it was a dead night, we'd have probably pulled paper and stuff like that. But it was like, no, we need to go help with this. You could tell it was a lot worse than, he was threatening suicide by cop, and he was mobile and drunk and armed, and the rest of the team was out looking for him. So we kind of quickly finished that call and then went and helped start doing the area search. As we did the area search, they were doing pings and stuff like that, and the sergeant was doing a good job running the call, I felt like. It was our swing shift sergeant, and so we got on scene, and he'd made a SWAT consult because we'd tracked down to this guy who was parked down on the Boise farm at the south end of Cloverdale.
And before you go too far, explain to some of the guys who are listening who don't know what a SWAT consult is. What is a SWAT consult?
So a SWAT consult is where there's a call that happens in patrol, and the patrol sergeant or lieutenant believes that it meets certain criteria, like an armed felon. I made the checklist for it, and now I can't remember everything's on it. But anyway, there's certain criteria that have to meet before we roll out the SWAT team because it's a higher use of force. Because we're bringing armor, bringing a whole bunch of dudes, potential to use, CS, CN, stuff. Well, not CN, CS, OC, stuff like that. So it's a higher level of force, and it's deemed that way through the courts. So we have to meet the criteria.
So SWAT team can't just be used for any call.
You just can't use a SWAT team for any call, or it can be an excessive use of force case, and then you have a 1987 violation and stuff like that, and people lose their house, and all those things that all the young guys on the SWAT team don't worry about. They're like, why didn't we get used for this? And it's like, well, because we shouldn't have got used for that, dude. But anyway, back to the story. So the sergeant was doing a SWAT consult, and I was you and I, in fact, we were sniper partners at the time. And we were both on scene, and they decided to bring the SWAT team out. And so we're like, all right, well, let's hump it over there on foot so we can see him, because this is out in the middle of the desert, nowhere. So headlights coming in, dude's going to see us. Could go mobile, could be a whole bunch of problems, right? So I deployed with my carbine. I was in patrol, so I didn't have all my SWAT gear. So I just grabbed my carbine, and I believe you grabbed your sniper rifle and all your gear. So shame on me, because I didn't grab shit. I grabbed a carbine. I figured we were going to go down there, give feedback, give updates. And I wanted a carbine if I had to shoot more than one round, right, instead of my sniper rifle. And we were just going down to get eyes on and give actionable intel to the entry team that was going to come down in armor and pin the vehicle and then work for a peaceful surrender. That was kind of the game plan that I was told. So you and I took off over the desert going down, and we were kind of walking along the side of the road, and we see headlights coming. And we're like, oh, shit, that might be him. So we ran off into the dirt and hid, and it wasn't him. And then we kept going. I bet we got probably half a mile towards where he was when he came at us. And we knew it was him because it was he had one headlight out. I believe it was the driver's side headlight was out in, gosh, I want to say like a red Nissan pickup. I could be wrong.
I believe that's what it was.
And so we run, we hide, I fall in a badger hole. And unbeknownst to me, and a thing that I changed later in training, was where I carry my index finger when I'm carrying my carbine, because you're taught, which is really good if you only ever touch a pistol, that when you're running with your pistol in your hand, you put your finger high in the ejection, your trigger finger high in the ejection port for that, sympathetic response of squeezing your hand when you fall. Well, I squeezed my hand when I fell, and where I thought my finger was, which would have been high in the ejection port, was on the mag release. So, unbeknownst to me, I dropped my magazine out of my gun, and we jump back up and start running. And I'm like, my gun feels light. I reach underneath it, and I'm like, there's no freaking mag there. So at this time, we weren't allowed to carry 5.56 mags on our duty belts. So there was no pouch, there's nowhere to stow it. And I'd always thought, I'll grab a spare mag and throw it in my pocket, because we all know magazines are the most common where your malfunction come from. Well, I got in a hurry, and I didn't do that. So I never followed my own advice. So if you get anything out of this podcast, take an extra fucking magazine, because it's embarrassing when you grab your partner and say, hey, do you got a spare mag? And they're looking at you, you're like, dude, you're a sniper. One shot, one kill. Fuck you. I don't have any mags. So I got a single shot now. And there's starting to be a standoff down at basically the command post with this guy, because he'd stopped, and from what I could tell on the radio, he was waving a gun around and stuff like that. And I don't know what was going on for sure. I just knew that we were downrange, and that wasn't good. So we took off and ran west, probably for 300 yards, probably a lot further than we needed to make sure that we were out of the line of fire, and then started looping back. So we had quite a hump, and we were running fast, because it's like, I want to get there and help my friends, right? It's like, I'm zero value here. So we made like a crescent moon run back to get back to the standoff. And about the time I got there, and of course I grabbed a mag from somebody else's bag, and so now I don't have a single shot. I don't know what kind of mag it was. I don't know what kind of ammo was in it. I know it was a 5.56. Look, those are 5.56. Jammed it in my freaking rifle, ran up to start helping, and the dude jumped in his car and starts driving away. So I was with one of my former trainees at the time, and I'm not going to mention names and stuff, but he jumped in the driver's seat, and he was about to take off, and I jumped in the rear passenger compartment of a patrol car. As you all know, you can't open those from the inside. So, like a lot of things went really fucked up for me on this call, but it all worked out in the end. So I wedged my foot in the threshold of the door. And I was holding onto the cage to keep the door from being wide open while we're in this pursuit across the desert. Well, as you know, desert roads are bumpy. So about 2 minutes into it, I bounce, my foot comes out, and I'm holding onto the door and pull it closed. So now I'm trapped in the back of a police car. And we're going to go get in a gunfight. Because I was convinced that this was ending in a gunfight based on the actions that I heard that he was doing on the radio while I was running back to try and help. So I yelled at the guy driving the car. I'm like, you got to pull her open this fucking door. He's like, I won't. I'm like, you need to open this fucking door. I'm trapped in the back of this car. He's like, I promise you, when we come to a stop, I will open the door. And I'm like, you promise? Like, what am I going to do? I'm in the back of a police car. I got a couple guns, but I don't have the ability to open the door. I'm like, roll the window down. Maybe I can reach out. Couldn't get my hand through the bars. Like, it was stupid. It was pretty cold. You know, we were all bundled up in winter clothing and everything. And so we make this loop through the desert, and it's like a Dukes of Hazzard freaking car chase. Like, we're bouncing everywhere, catching air. It was kind of fun. Like, but you're pumped up because you're like, I know how this is going to end. Like, oftentimes you don't know how it's going to end, and I think a lot of shootings are action versus reaction type shootings. But this one, for me, I was like, I know how this is going to end because this guy keeps pointing a gun at the cops, and I ain't going to let him do that. Like, unless he gets out and with his hands above his head and nothing in his hands, this guy's getting shot. Well, we loop back and basically drive back through where the command post / staging area was, and one of the Meridian officers that had arrived was able to get a spike in. So he spikes him, and eventually we come to a stop northbound on Cloverdale near Poen. And true to his word, my buddy jumps out, opens my door, unasked, run right up to the very front. I get next to the sergeant, and he's posted up in between the A post and the door. And I'm like, are you good if I go right here next to the door? Because I want to be online with him. Because I don't know what somebody's going to, you know, I've been taught you get online before you bring your rifle or your pistol up because of the action versus reaction of people movement. He was like, yep, I'm good. I'm like, cool. So I dropped down and I actually went prone. And so I had decent cover from the door. Not awesome, but it was what I had at the time. And I felt like, you know, I was taught from when I was brand new, sometimes your front sight's going to be your freaking cover. It's just the way it is. So sometimes your front sight's got to be your cover. Use it well, right? And I was my favorite sergeant that always told me that. He was a good man. But that was back when I was like 21, 22 years old when I heard that. So anyway, I dropped down prone, and the guy jumps out of the car, and he turns like with his right hand swinging towards us and index a rifle or index a pistol. And it was a 45 long Colt. I can remember, like, that's a 45 long Colt. And I shot him twice in the chest, and then he spun, and then I hammered the trigger. Like, I called the two good shots, like one in his right pec, one in his left pec, like good high chest shots. I'm like, those are good ones. And he turned, and I hammered the trigger. And I don't know, I probably shot him 12 times in the back while he was falling down, in the side and in the back. And so he went down, and I stood up, and I thought I'd been the only one who'd shot. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a weird feeling when there's 14 fucking cops there, and you're the only one who pressed the trigger. But I got a big sigh of relief as I stood up because I could see my sergeant doing a mag exchange from a slide lock. So I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one who saw that. Cool. Yeah. You know, because you have those things, like a lot of things go through your brain in a very short amount of time. And I'm not a super intelligent guy, but a lot of things go through your brain when you're shooting because it feels like time slows down. You're able to think a bunch more. So anyway, I stood up, and I see him doing a slide lock reload. I'm like, okay, cool. And he'd been in a few gunfights, so I knew, like, okay, we both saw the same thing. Like, I trusted his judgment. I'm like, okay, cool. He saw what I saw. We're good. But now we can see headlights down the road. We're like, oh, shit. Somebody's got to go check that other car because they're like 30 feet. You know, so 10 yards. And I felt like we were probably 25 yards in our in our distance from the guy that we shot and where we were posted, but then another 15 yards maybe past him was another vehicle that had pulled up, and it was a dairy worker going to the dairy. And so my sergeant's like, I got to get down there and check him. And he jumps in, throws it in drive, and frickin' zooms. I'm like, you just took our cover. What the fuck? So we come up with an assault plan. I'm like, we got to clear this guy. Like, he ain't moving. He ain't obeying commands. We had a good assault team there. I can't remember if we had a shield or not. I want to say we probably did, but I can't remember because I'm not going to put a shield in my hand if I can put a rifle in my hand, right?
Yeah.
And I had my rifle in my hand. I had somebody on a teaser. We had a Boise unit show up, and they just released their canine. I told them not to. They wanted to fish hook him, send up the canine, and pull him back to us. I'm like, no, don't do that. We don't know where the gun is. He bites on there and then turns and starts shooting at us. We don't have any cover. That's a really shitty plan. So they held the dog off. We did our assault, basically a linear assault, and we didn't get close enough. I got tased that motherfucker because I would rather have him being tased while we're trying to get up and get him in custody so he can't do anything than, because he's facing away from us. Like, I can't see his hands. So the guy tases him. Of course, we're too far away, so they don't make it because, that distance thing, I didn't judge it correctly. Then I'm like, tase that motherfucker. Fortunately, the cartridge has more than one shot. So when we got close enough, he got a tase on him. I stepped over him, and the gun was out of his hand. So I stepped on the gun, and two guys grabbed him and handcuffed him. And then it seemed like the paramedics were right there, which they were, because they're in the staging area. So they just followed the pursuit, and then they started working on him probably within 10 seconds of him being in custody. So for the bad guy, really good luck. And I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to stop their behavior when they're doing assaultive behavior and then render aid when safe to do so, which is what happened on this call. It was safe to do so. They started rendering aid, threw him in the ambulance, took him to the hospital. So about that time, I catch up with you. I don't know where you'd been. We got separated.
I actually had a friend of mine who was non-law enforcement named Jeff, and was doing a ride-along with me that night. And, he gets in the car, and I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to be a boring night tonight. But it turned out not to be. When the bad guy got in the car and the pursuit took off, went right as you got into the back of that other patrol car. I went and found my car. Somebody had moved it. Jumped in my car. My rider was in there. He had my plate carrier up against the front windshield, and he was trying to take cover behind the front windshield.
That was pretty smart, actually.
Yeah. And we kind of got in the end of that pursuit because I think I was one of the last ones to get in my car. And as I come up to where you guys had already stopped, you were already out of your vehicle. You were up there with the other guys on the, right prior to the shooting. As I come running up, you guys start shooting, and I was kind of right behind you, kind of looking over the top of everybody. And I come running up next to the sergeant who said was doing that slide lock reload at the time, and that's kind of where I ended up. And then
so good on you having freaking discipline to wait till you got online.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people. You can watch a lot of YouTube videos and see some crazy shit. People shooting over each other's shoulders and shit.
Yeah, I could have shot, I guess, over the top of people, but that probably wouldn't have been a very good idea. That was against any training that we've had. So
yeah, but good on you. Like, intense situation like that. Like, some people, like, you see it every day when you watch YouTube videos and body cam footage. You're like, oh my God, how did you not shoot that cop in front of you?
Yeah. Yeah, and then once the shooting was started, they went down, checked that guy in the vehicle. Kind of things slowed down, and then paramedics start working on the guy, and then all the phone calls were made to admin. Investigators started coming out, and then what happened with you after that?
So right after the shooting, I went, oh fuck, they're gonna put my name in the paper. It's gonna be all over the news like the last time. Well, the last time there hadn't been a shooting in like 15 years. So they played that story up forever, and the Valley's even at that time, gotten a little bit worse. And so the shooting stories don't stay in the media as long. But I can remember you coming up to me, because I was emotional at the time, because I'm like, fuck, I don't want this shit. I don't want my name all over the media. I don't want my kids to freaking hear about it. Like, and you look at me and you're like, hey, dude, what the hell do you think we go to the range every other week for training in SWAT? I'm like, yeah, you're right. This ain't no big deal. So that was my, like, one moment, like, oh, fuck. But it cleared up pretty good with what you told me, and then somebody found me a dip, because I needed a dip. I hadn't dipped for, like, 5 years either, and I'm like, somebody give me a dip. Somebody threw me a can. And so I was pretty calmed down, and they're like, hey, we got to haul you off to the hotel. And I'm like, where's my car? Because I didn't want to lose, like I could leave $100 bill sitting on the front seat of my patrol car, and it would stay there for the rest of its life until I came back and got it. You leave a flashlight, or you leave like anything tactical or any cool piece of kit, like that shit's disappearing when the investigators show up. Because I had it happen before. I had my flashlight stole, and I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident. But I didn't have a flashlight after I got my car back on that. So I wanted to know where my car was. And for some reason, my car never made it into the crime scene. So they give me an escort dude, another good friend of mine. I've known him since I was 14 years old. In fact, his dad's the whole reason that I went to work for the county. And so he's driving me to the hotel. And we're doing like 100 miles an hour. Like he's freaking out, and I'm like, dude, they can't do shit till I get there. Slow the fuck down. You're gonna beat everybody there, and we're gonna sit around. And like finally, I had to threaten him. I'm like, if you don't stop and start driving like a normal person, I'm getting out of the car and walking. Like, so he finally slowed down, and you know, we get down to the hotel, what was it, Doubletree Riverside. Yeah. I think that's where 99% of the time we take dudes after shooting, and I'm hanging out. I'm like, man, I'm hungry. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't had my lunch. I was like, I'm hungry. So we ordered room service, and the major at the time, Ron Freeman was the major at the time. He shows up, comes into my room. He's like, hey, you doing good? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I feel good. Everything's good. You need anything? No, I'm good. So he was really good to me. He's like, good job. Like everything you want to hear from your boss, because the sheriff was out of town. And so go through that. They come in, they take blood, they take urine, they took my uniform, took all my guns, everything. I never used my handgun, but they got to rule that out and all that. So they do all that and take everything, like even my boots. So I'm standing there in my long johns, and they're ready to take those. And my escort officer, he's like, really? You have him stand here naked? And so they're like, okay, you're fine. So that was a little frustrating. They ran and grabbed me some Walmart sweats, and I tried calling my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend, and on the way to the hotel, I called her a couple times and left her some messages, but it didn't wake her up because I'd had her bring me some clothes. She was working day watch at the time, but she didn't wake up for it, so that's okay. Like everything was fine. But we finally get all done, and they take their pictures of you. Like they take pictures of you in your uniform, how you were dressed. So is it obvious you were a police officer? I was wearing my normal uniform with a coat on that had a badge and everything. So that was all good. But they took all my stuff, and then they released me. So I get a ride back to the station where my personal vehicle was, because I ain't coming to work the next night, because they ain't having you come to work after that. So get back to the station, and everyone in there is writing reports except for me, and a lot of them are the swing shift guys. And it's like my 42 time. It's like almost 7 o'clock in the morning, and I can remember laughing, going, "Shit, I'm the only one who ain't getting overtime out of this. Everybody else banked a bunch of overtime." But
yeah, I think I got a 17-hour day that day.
Yeah, I got a 10.75. Like I got off on my 42 time. I think I'm the only person who did that. Like, yep, you're golden. So. Yeah, that's kind of the roundabout story on it. I'm sure I missed a few things. I mean, it's been a few years. I think that was about 11 years ago.
Yeah, has it been that long?
Yeah, 2013. So
sometimes everything seems like it was a long time ago. But yeah, I remember that day. Yeah, I remember. I say my rider looking like a ghost. But anyway. So as far as training up to that point, do you feel like your training that you had received or you had attended up to that point was sufficient? Or
I'm going to say no, because I don't think that you can ever attend enough training. And this is where we get on this, is I don't think you're ever going to get enough training and experience to really be ready for that moment, because I made quite a few mistakes. I jumped in the back of a police car. I didn't grab an extra magazine. My index finger, instead of where I put it now versus where I put it then, was in the wrong place. I mean, things that I picked up in training after that, but I was also, why did this happen? Like, what did I do wrong? And things like that. And, some self-critiques. As far as the shooting part of it, I felt like I was pretty well trained for the shooting part of that. Although you never can stop. Like, I don't think you're ever going to get to the pinnacle of, I never have to train anymore with my tools to be proficient. But I felt pretty proficient with my rifle at that time. Like I said, I was assigned as a sniper. Trained every other week. Go shoot with your buddies. Best gig out in SWAT, really, if you can get it. That's a good gig. But the training side of it,
I know you'd had other incidents throughout your career, and you had a OIS early on in your career. Comparing your training that you had back then compared to what you had at that time.
Oh yeah, night and day difference. My response was way better. I still made errors. The first one, I made errors which I would basically put on our training at the time. We had a 4-hour rifle class, and 2 hours of it was at the range, and 2 hours was a PowerPoint, and then we only qualled with rifles. I wasn't on SWAT at the time. It's like, yeah, you can carry a rifle now. You've been certified. You had a whole whopping 4 hours of training.
That was early on in your career.
Yeah, that was when I was brand new patrolman. I want to say 97 or 98 when I got to go through that, because you could purchase and carry your own rifle. If you were a SWAT guy, you got issued a Mini 14 back then. So I had an AR-15, and so can I go through the class? So let me go through the class. I mean, not a knock against them. I think that our training from the 90s to the 2020s is night and day difference. The money that we put into training is night and day difference. We had some good training for its day back then, but you can't really, you're comparing apples to oranges because of the amount of experience that people in training now have versus Ada County was a different place at the time.
Yeah, a lot less population, that's for sure.
Yeah. Like when I went to patrol, the county city line was at 5 Mile and Fairview, and Maple Grove and Franklin and Cole and Overland.
Yeah, and I believe total employees, from the sheriff on down to the newest secretary. I think when I first started, we had just a little over 200 people.
Yeah.
And when I retired, I think it was just under 900. Right?
Yeah, it's definitely a big change now. So yeah, the training that I had between then, and honestly, my first shooting was what caused me to get into competitive shooting, because the county wasn't, and the county's never gonna pay you enough and give you enough ammo to prepare you to be in a gunfight. You're gonna have to do that on your own. In fact, you were the one who said, come shoot a USPSA. I think it was called IPSC back then, a long time ago. I had some big gaps in it due to finances and stuff like that, or I never would have stopped. But I felt like I need to be prepared, and competitive shooting, where I have to shoot fast and accurately and move around and do some stuff, this is going to help me. And I think it did.
You mean it won't get you killed in the streets?
It might, but shit, it might not either. You know what I mean? You can do a 175 bill drill. I think that's probably pretty good if you're on the streets. What do I know, though?
That's awesome. I know, during my time with the county, you and I were able to go on, expand our training. Our training went from being pretty basic to being pretty good, I know there's a lot better training out there, but I think we did pretty good to bring it to where it was before we retired.
Yeah, I think when you and I were running, it was me and you doing all the firearms training for the entire agency, and we'd have, a couple other people that would show up, and they'd bring coffee, and they'd help carry targets and stuff. But the actual putting on of the training, I want to say you and I were doing the lion's share of it for many years until more people came in and we got more people excited about it. And, you know, the hard part is you only know what you know. And so for guys, if you can get out, you can go to another class, like, okay, that class, maybe you're going to go to a class that you go, okay, only thing I got out of that was I'm never doing that. That's still a plus. There's so much good training out there. You know, and I think the big gap right now, or at least the gap that I felt when I retired, and that was almost a year ago, was we do a really good job of teaching marksmanship. And most firearms training programs, in my opinion, that I've seen are teaching fundamentals and marksmanship, but they aren't teaching gunfighter stuff. And I don't think you learn gunfighter stuff on a flat range. I think you have to get into a house, you have to, you know, get the sims out, get in those simulated gunfights, but you also have to have the wherewithal to keep it real.
Yeah, because you can't have it just be a free-for-all
It can't be a free-for-all paintball. It can't be Benghazi. You know, every once in a while, it's probably good to throw a Benghazi at a certain group of people. But by and large, I think every patrol officer should quarterly be doing some sim work, working on their gunfighter skills, whether it's clearing a structure, whether it's open air, whether it's dealing with a vehicle assault, whether it's doing a mobile takedown for some reason the patrol team decided to do.
And when you're talking about gunfighter stuff, I think you're talking about, right, because you got to go to the range, you got to learn how to shoot,
Yes.
how to manipulate the gun fast and accurately. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But then you got that separation where, like, okay, I can run the gun fairly fast, fairly accurately. Now we got to get into maybe scenario type stuff where we're having to make decisions.
Yes.
Learn how to make
decision-based training with a gun in your hand. Because we do a lot of decision-based training, whether it's with your mouth or whether it's a tabletop exercise or those types of things. But having role players and that are scripted and that's on the training unit to do a good job of this is the goal of this specific scenario, and having role players that are able to follow the rules versus turning it into a game. But I really do believe that a lot of benefits can come out of sim training. And I've been very fortunate and blessed to have gone to one of the best schools, in my opinion, in the country to learn about gunfighter stuff, using sims, using flashbangs. It was a SWAT school. Can I name it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Darcy, Direct Action Resource. If you can go to Darcy to their, LECTC 1 and 2, it will be the best training you will ever get in your career because you'll get in hundreds of simulated gunfights over the course of a week and become confident with your skills and learn how to use cover. I've learned more about using cover and concealment in a shoot house from a role player that was a plumber while I was standing on the catwalk watching how they utilized the cover and utilized dirty light than I ever got out of playing around with it. I think that a lot of lessons can be learned from watching others people do specific scenarios, and it's just, I can't say enough about the course and the curriculum down there, and it's always evolving. Can't say enough good about it. The best training I got in my career by far.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good place. There's a lot of other good places as well. But most, as we know, most agencies are probably not going to send their people down there, unfortunately, or to anything similar, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's why you say it's really important for the guys, if you're doing this in-house, got to make sure it doesn't turn into a free-for-all paintball game.
Yeah.
You got to control it. The trainers, whoever's in charge, need to make sure it's controlled and somewhat realistic, right? And I know one of the things that we would do is, you give people 6 rounds sometimes because otherwise it does become a free-for-all.
Mm-hmm.
That way guys have to really, pick how many rounds they're going to fire, or, hey, you're going to fire 6 rounds and I got to do a reload, and because if not, it just turns into that game.
It's
nobody
pretty
learns
tough
anything.
not for it to. If it's with your friends, it's really hard not to become a game. If your role players are other people that aren't friends, I think that's one way to control it. Excuse me, as you bring in a group of role players and you brief them, this is what you're going to do for this, and you get a good group of role players, they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. And then what if you're not in law enforcement? How do you do that kind of stuff? Is it kind of hard to get.
Actually, like the civilian side, I think you can find a lot of stuff out on the civilian market that caters to that. You know, like
Airsoft and
airsoft sims. I like from going to Darcy. Like there's a lot of civilians that go through that program.
yeah. What would you, if you had to give some advice to somebody looking into law enforcement or is in law enforcement, somebody younger, what kind of advice would you give them as far as training? What kind of training should they seek out?
See, that's a kind of a tough one because there's so many, you know, what's their passion about? My passion was about tactics.
Yeah.
That was really the only reason, like, that was my passion. There's guys out there, and thankfully there are, that their passion is going and doing DUI arrests, chasing dope, doing all those things. So that's a tough one for me. I would say, you know, you strap a gun on your hip every day when you go to work and you wear body armor every day when you go to work. And so becoming proficient with your firearm, like, that should be mandatory, but I would recommend that everyone seek some extra way, touch that gun more than when you go to the range for the department quals, when you go for department training. And unfortunately, my experience on the firearms training side of it is the bulk of the people there touch their guns when the county sends them to the range to either qualify or have some sort of training. And they're usually not thrilled to be there. So that thing might save your life, or more importantly, it might save the guy's life standing next to you. So you kind of owe it, I think, when you get in law enforcement, you owe it to yourself to become as good as you can with the tools of your trade. And yeah, the guns are tools of our trade, but they're kind of the most important ones, because if used wrong, you put a big black eye on us, and if used correctly, you have the opportunity to save and help people. You know, obviously the ethical, moral, and legal obligations come into that. But if you pull your pistol out and you don't know what you're doing with it, you can really be a detriment to everybody that's there, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you 100%. So what's up with Carl Olson for this retirement? What are you going to do now?
Hell, I don't know. Whatever I want.
You going to keep shooting?
Oh yeah. No, I keep shooting USPSA. Last year I was pretty fortunate. I shot 6 major matches traveling. I don't have as many that I've put on the books for this year. I'm gonna focus a little bit more on family. Kind of didn't focus as much on family. I was pretty selfish last year. I'm going and shooting whatever match I wanted and just doing whatever I wanted. And my wife tolerated it. She was real good about it. But this year, a little bit more focus on some family stuff and keeping it balanced. You know, I think that you can get into that competitive shooting and it start just becoming your whole life. And I think there needs to be a balance.
Kind of like police work, it sounds like.
Kind of like police work a little bit, but you know, you're playing a game. There's difference. Like the camaraderie is very similar when you get with your group of buddies that you shoot with, and you razz each other. And I really enjoy that aspect of the competitive shooting is the friendships and the bullshitting and just, you know, having a good time, making fun of each other, stuff like that. But also it's like, where are you going to go where you can go get 150 to 200 rounds in a Saturday afternoon of actually testing yourself? Because for me, when I go to the range and I put one target up and I draw and I shoot 2, oh yeah, those are alphas. Like there's no pressure there. Like to get that simulated pressure of all my friends are watching, and am I going to hear them laughing in the middle of this? Or are they going to, you know, are they going to come back and say that was
Whether
good?
you do good or bad, you might hear laughing, right?
Yeah, you're going to hear laughing no matter what. But when they come back, they're going to say, you can't be our friend anymore because you suck. You know, things like that. Like, but I think that translates over into, I don't know where else you can get that pressure that can translate into performance in real world.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think, you know, early on when you and I both started shooting competitively, it was rare to see another law enforcement officer out there. And it seems like now we're starting to see more and more. So not a lot more, but more than what we used to.
More than 2. More than me
yeah,
and you.
More than,
now
more
there's
than 2
more.
now there's about usually It'll be 5 or 6 sometimes. You know, out there. So.
Yeah, the hard part I think for guys in law enforcement is
work schedule.
One's a work schedule, but two, at least I experienced this, is you go to the range with the department and you're like, man, I'm one of the best guys here. And you show up to a USPSA match and you get your ass handed to you by a fat plumber. Like
That is true. That is true.
The dude's huffing on a vape. He's freaking goofing around. And then he shoots a stage that you shoot in 18 and 9 and has better points. You're like, what the hell? So it's very humbling. And I think it's embarrassing and it's hard for guys. It was embarrassing to me, but I was like, I could either be embarrassed and never come back, or I'm going to come back and ask this guy how he did this. How are you doing these things? What's going through your brain? And a lot of it is really gunfighter stuff. Your transitions between targets. You're seeing what you need to see to make this shot at this distance.
The processing speed, I think, is what I really notice. I feel like because you're running these stages, you know, right to left, you're running speed shooting, speed reloading, and you're having to really speed up your vision. And I think you start to learn how to process a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And I think that really translates over to whether you're room clearing or on patrol, right?
Yeah, when you can learn to see faster, I think that translates into everything you do. Like, yeah, when you're doing room clearing, like when you first start on a SWAT team, your processing speed's pretty freaking slow. And I think the longer you do it, the quicker it gets on looking in a room, entering a room, seeing what you really need to see, looking for the creepy shit. But yeah, the competitive shooting side of it, I think, of forcing your brain to solve problems faster to get a better score translates into everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like the way they score it, right? It's points per second.
Yeah.
Points per second translates to not only on the shooting range, but out on the street. You want to be able to score a lot of points fast.
Yeah, I want to get more points than the guy that's trying to shoot me.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, going back to the shooting incident we just talked about, the aftermath, do you feel like the department had good support for you?
I felt like I had pretty good support from the department, yeah.
What do they do as far as, right, you go to the hotel after that? Do detectives come interview you then, or what happens after that?
So they've changed it quite a bit. So now they require at least one sleep cycle before they do your interview, and you're able to, well, at the time we didn't have body cameras, we had car cameras, but you're able to review your audio, you're able to review the radio transmissions, you have access to all that stuff before you're interviewed. And obviously, I didn't need an attorney, but I would tell everyone, if you're going to be interviewed by the police where someone was dead, you should take an attorney.
Yeah.
Good
advice.
Like take an attorney. I was a member of FOP, so I got a free attorney for officer-involved shootings.
Free attorney for your monthly...
For my monthly fee.
Payment.
Yeah, for my monthly payment that I used an attorney once over the course of 15 years, so it probably came out to a wash. But I looked at it as it was cheap insurance. And if I could say anything to anyone that would come through, like if you're being interviewed for a homicide, because that's what it is, they're just trying to find out if it's justifiable or not, you should have a lawyer there. So if nothing out of this comes out of it.
And so there was, what, a day or 2 days after the incident that they
I want to say
interviewed you?
mine was 2 days later that I was interviewed. And I had a representative, a detective from my agency, and a detective from the Meridian Police Department who was the lead of the investigation.
So they have another agency who's lead on the investigation.
Yeah, so they do it's called the Critical Incident Task Force. So the agency that runs the investigation, the criminal investigation, has no involvement, basically. So none of their officers were involved. They didn't have a use of force, so that they can be looked at as objective. I think it's overkill. Like you swore an oath to do certain things, and you should be able to investigate people that you work with, whether, of course, my shooting was a good shooting, so
yeah.
I wasn't sweating it. I know what I saw.
And how many other officers were involved with yours that actually fired? Do you remember?
There were 4.
4?
Yeah.
And they were all from your
so
agency or no?
3 from Ada County, and 1 was a trainee, and 1 guy from Boise.
Okay. So 3
And
from
the
Ada
other
County,
2,
1 from
they
Boise.
just popped 1 round into it. I think.
Yeah.
I think they told me because we were shooting. We trust you. I don't know. Don't ever say that shit though. That's a bad line to tell an investigator. They were shooting, so I figured, fuck it.
Yeah, not a good idea. Not a good idea. So why is it that they wait a day or 2 to?
It's something to
interview?
do with your sleep cycle because you're hopped up on adrenaline and all these chemicals that dump into your body because you get that fight or flight that I can't remember all the technical terms of it. I used to be able to, but basically your body goes, you need to be able to see really fucking good right now. And you need to be able to do everything right now because if you don't, you'll die. So we're going to dump all these chemicals into your body all at once. And so you get this giant adrenaline dump. And like, I could see so well that day. I can remember, holy shit, I can see good. Like, I could see his front sight on his muzzle when he turned and punched the gun. And I started pressing, but just the vision that, you know, all those things that dump into your fight or flight, like it's time to make sure you live. And we're going to do everything chemically that our body can chemically do to it to give you an advantage, I guess. For like, that's my layman, really bad explanation of it. So the flip side of that is it takes about 3 days to burn off and you feel like shit. So if you get in a shooting, you should go work out as soon as you're done with whatever they're going to do and they give you the opportunity to do anything of your own. Go and exercise as hard as you can to try and burn off that adrenaline and burn off all those other, you know, serotonin or whatever the hell it is, but burn all that off for a quicker recovery. And I didn't know that on the first time I was involved in one of those. I knew it on the second one, so I made sure and did it. But still, I was out of it for probably 2 days, just exhausted. Like I went as soon as I got home from work, I changed into my gym clothes. I went to the gym. I had a horrible workout, but I did it. Then I came home and I slept for a couple hours. My girlfriend came over. We went and got some lunch. She had to go to work. Yeah, like I was a zombie for probably not a zombie, but I was just like, I'm wiped out. I'm tired.
Yeah, just like you haven't slept.
Yeah.
What about on the psychological side? Does the department make you go to see a shrink or
Yeah,
see
you're
a
supposed
counselor?
to, at the time, I don't know what they have it now, but you were supposed to go and talk to a counselor. At the time, it was Jamie Champion. I don't know who they use now, but you'd go and they'd sign you off saying, yep, they're fine, or no, they're not fine, I guess. I don't know. They signed me off as fine each time. So I don't know if they're doing their job right or not.
Is that true?
But
You're fine?
I think so. It don't matter now. That was 11 years ago.
You're retired now.
I'm retired.
Well, you're fine enough to get that Percy check once a month.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
and so once you go there, they just do a quick mental health checkup on you.
Yeah, like a mental health check. Are you okay with what happened?
You're good to go back for duty.
Yeah. Yeah, they make you take, at the time, I don't know what they do now. I don't work there. But at the time, it was you had to take 3 days off.
3
Three
days off.
work days.
That's not too many. You think that's enough for most guys?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I always felt like, for me, I was like, I'm sitting on the bench. I should be back in the game. There ain't nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
So for me, I think you're on the bench for the next 3 days was harder. Like, I was in no condition to come to work the next 2 days for sure. I would have not been at my peak performance. I was tired, but I still felt like upstairs, like mentally, like, why are you putting me on the bench? I just did a good job. Like, it feels, I know why they're doing it, because they want you to get your sleep in and get rested and all those other things. But for me, it's like, I'd have rather gone to work.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a lot of times.
Looking back, I
guys
should
have
have took
too
a
much-
month off on the county dime.
Gone on vacation, yeah.
Yeah, I should have took a month vacation on the county dime looking back.
Because they'll let you have more time off, right?
Oh,
if
yeah.
want
If
more
you
than
need
3.
more time, they'll give you more time. It's not like you get 3 days and get your ass to work. It's like, it's a mandatory minimum of 3. And then after that, I know of guys that have taken 2 weeks. I know of guys that are like, I'm ready to come back now, twiddle
Yeah.
my thumbs at home, going nuts.
Now, I've heard guys from, not around here, but other places that take a lot of time off.
Yeah.
A lot of time off.
Yeah.
Like 6 months, a year.
Yeah, but looking back at it, I could have had a pretty good vacation at the time. I mean, I was on graveyard. Why not get off of that for a couple weeks?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, from what I've seen and experienced, I think getting back to work within a week is probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think that I think for me it was a return to normalcy.
Exactly.
Because you can't talk to anybody till you're interviewed. So your friends call you, hey, what happened? Can't really tell you.
Yeah.
And you get like 150 fucking phone calls like, hey, what happened? I'll tell you on Friday because they're interviewing me Friday morning. I'll give you a call back, Yeah. I mean, it's nothing bad on them. They're like, I think people are legitimately in the LE community. I think they genuinely are like, they care. Like,
one of the things that, one of my interviews, 2 interviews ago, interviewed another deputy with Ada County who'd been involved in a shooting, and he said he suffered from some PTSD, and he says he remembers other deputies calling or sending messages, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And he's like, I know those guys were sincere, he goes, but you'll never pick up the phone when you need help. So his suggestion was, hey, if you got a buddy who's been involved in a critical incident, call him up, say, hey, tomorrow at noon we're going to lunch, and grab a couple of guys. What do you think of that?
I think that's a good idea. I also think that you got to have a core group of people to make it through this career.
Yeah.
And shit, get embarrassed here a minute. I was pretty fortunate. I had a core group of people that day or night I could call and say, hey, need you for something. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that the buddy check-in of, hey, you doing okay? Like, for me, that was enough. And I always had a core group of people that it was like, it's really bad, I need somebody. I had a core group of people I could call. And I was pretty fortunate, I think, there. But I think everybody has to have that in this career because it's just not like a gunfight. Like, really, like my second shooting, like, that was no big deal, like, to me. And I'm not trying to downplay like the gravity of what happened, but the mental side of it, like, there's plenty of other things that I saw that were worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Other victims.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Other
sure.
things I've seen that it was way worse and caused me more baggage, for lack of a better term, than that shooting. That shooting was like, yep, I did my job. I think I did pretty good. I made some mistakes. There's some things I could have done better, but did the best I could with what I had at the time and the training that I had at the time. But I think that that's just for me, like, that shooting did not bother me. Now, I've seen and done other things that did bother me. And I was fortunate to have a group of people. I go, hey, can we talk about this for a minute? Because that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? So, and everybody that does this job, they're going to have that. And like you were saying, the other deputy said, hey, yeah, grab them and say we're going to lunch. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But I think that we also, like, it's kind of funny. It's like when I got into this career, it's like, if you said you needed help, you'd have been looked at as you were weak. Yeah. And I think that the LA community has changed to where we understand you see a lot of bullshit and that it adds up and it's okay to ask for help. And I think that if you need help, you need to go and look for it rather than finding it in the wrong ways. Because when guys can go and get help the wrong way, and we've seen it to where it ends their career, ends their marriage, ends their family, causes a lot of issues. And so having the strength to say, I need some help, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and that's why it's important we got to check on our buddies because, like you said, for one of us to reach out to somebody is a lot more difficult than one of us going, hey, I'm just checking on you.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So, yeah, you've had a lot of good experiences through your career. You've got to see some good things, some bad things, and I got to work with you on a lot of those things. And it was always an honor to have you as a trainer, my team leader, And I knew if I went on a call with you, you were one of the guys I would definitely want to go through the door with. So,
Likewise.
all right, Carl. I think we're going to call it good for today. That's about an hour right there. But here in the future, we're going to have you on. We got your first OIS. That was a pretty big deal. I remember when that happened. I was actually on day shift when that happened, and or actually I was on night shift, but that happened on a day shift. But there was other deputies involved with that, so we're going to try to bring you all in on that, and we'll talk about it. So hopefully in a future episode, we'll have you all on.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
All right. Thank you.